Hello, friends and fellow gamers, I am That Zero, and today we are back with a unit deep dive, which we have not seen for a long time. I know people have wanted them, but they prove to be a bit grueling in the past. They take a lot of time and effort to put together, but if you're seeing this message, it means I sucked it up and got my crap together. So thanks for being here, I appreciate it. Today we're going to be taking out one of the two units that was just released in the Part 1 of the Tales of series collab. And that unit is Luke von Fabre. Now, I'm going to wait and cover all the basics in the podcasts come Sunday, so be sure to check that out. I'll have a link in the description below. But what I do want to do here is talk about my initial impressions so far and go through all of the interesting quirks that I found about him and then share some builds with you as well. The core strengths of this guy: 1, light element and dual wield innate. That means he can very simply just run something like Trishula if you want to be lazy to get around elemental resistance. That's always a bonus. 2, he's got extremely high caps for a dual wield unit. I believe that he can get upwards of like 36, 38k before any help, which is really nice. Good hit counts, which he has. He doesn't have the fastest animation speeds, but they're serviceable and good enough. He's got a gap closer in order to get in close on some things. He's got a S2 that doesn't require any sort of range things. You can fire it off whenever you want, when you need to, for an AoE of damage around him. That's nice. And a really big deal that we haven't really seen much before is that he specializes in pursuit damage. Innately, he's got a plus 80% to his pursuit damage. So that means that something like Icy Guardian, for example, that gives you an extra 50% damage on your critical hits, that gets bumped up to, rough math, like 90% damage. You're getting almost double damage on each of those criticals as long as they're ice neutral. If they're weak to ice, you're definitely doing double damage, just flat out. That's how it is. So the higher you can get that crit rate, the better and better that is, if you particularly want to go that way. And another interesting thing that I found, at least, which I'll show in one of the builds, is that because he's so good at maximizing on this pursuit damage, you can do things like use his regular attacks for DPS, which outside of cheesy Ice Queen Xbet, we haven't really seen before. So the fact that he can use regular attacks for some DPS in situations where it's relevant, it just humors me, and I think it's really, really great. Main thing he's got going for him, again, he can easily run Trish, dual wield, has some good innate multipliers to be able to get his damage up there relatively high. So you could just use him as just a lazy generic unit to just cruise through like multiplayer or whatever. But then if you want to spend more time to figure out the best ways to min-max how he can do things and how he can dish out damage, he has a higher ceiling that requires a skill gap and understanding to get through. The first layer is, of course, getting your pursuit stuff down, getting a nice build for Icy Guardian to work, but then he's also got some extra stuff as well, such as in one of his traits here, he's got a chance to get this FOF buff. So whenever anybody in the party, including himself, when they do damage with something elemental, then there's a chance, whether it's from attack magic or a skill, that he gains a buff. And that makes it so that the next skill attack that you do is actually going to do a massive pursuit attack. Now, I don't know if this is 100% damage or if it's 60% damage, but what I do know is that if you use it against something that is neutral, it will be 100% damage, which means whether it's from his 80% boost or just because it's 100% pursuit attack, it's really, really good, and it hits really hard. So literally doubles his damage when he actually gets that proc for that next skill that actually gets applied. We'll go ahead and we'll show that in some of this stuff here. Very, very good if you can utilize it. Assuming it is hits like I suspect it to be, that's my gut feel based on what I've seen so far. We can wait for the data mine on it, but I think being able to maximize that comes down to what are units that you could complement him with that have really high hit counts that happen really, really quickly so that you could get him buffs on demand when you need them more reliably. Also notably, this is now one of those things, again, to add to time trials that's just RNG, RNG, RNG. You could do something where you have one of your other units throw an attack, like say a Vayne throws an S1, and if it doesn't proc the buff, okay, cool, reset. Like that's stuff that I anticipate probably doing, is little things like that. But if you do get it, okay, cool, then that means that first, like, S3 that Luke's going to throw is going to be supercharged. There's some really interesting things you can do with micromanaging to min-max him and boost him even further beyond. But his floor for how good he is, if you just lazily use him as just a generic dual-wield light unit, he's extremely good. Totally forgot. another big drawing point, he can have super armor. I mean, it's limited super armor, but still, you'll see. It's helpful when you need it. It's more tactical than some other units that we've seen. Like, for instance, we've seen Nero be able to, once per wave, get that 40-second buff with his Sin Devil trigger to be able to just go crazy. That's not how this one works. Instead, you can use it multiple times. You can use it as many times as you want, but you have to charge it up by using skills, and then it only lasts 10 seconds. You can obviously extend that with buffs and things, but yeah, fun stuff. All right, let's take a really quick look at his base kit and see if there's anything here that is overly notable before we hop into some examples. So Overlimit, this is the one I was talking about. This is how you get a super armor buff. When we're in game, I'll explain how I found this works and the mechanics behind it. Curse Nil, this is really great because this actually makes his ailment spread really gross. Like, look at this. Resist blind, resist silence, resist illness, and nil to stun, and then, oh, weak to curse. Oh, that sucks. Nope, actually resist to curse because you get a +2 right in his base kit. So that's probably the best ailment spread I feel like we've ever seen on a unit, with Murren being like a close second, but he is weak to stun, which sucks. So you can easily do something like just throw one of the accessories that gives you a +1 to everything, and then just be nil in all the things except poison, which is crazy to me. That's really awesome. I love that. All right, other things. Comes with auto crit, which is good. Now, biggest miss for me, because he's crit focused clearly, and crits are one of the things you need for some key pursuit build. The thing you don't want to ever spend SC on is elemental crit raises, because they cost 12 for 9 SC worth of value. And in general, for our purposes in PvE, it's only 3 SC worth of value, which is the 5% crit rate. So he doesn't have it innate, which feels super bad, but it is what it is. So he's missing that. If you really want to go out of your way to add it, you can, but yeah, I don't. I'll show you how I run him when we get to the build section here. Meteor Force, this is really massive. The only other unit to have this is Shift Kyle, who is poopy, but on this guy, just flat out makes your extra attack damage be +50%. This is nutty. This is part of the reason why he's so gross and so broken. But not only that, he also has extra attack boost 1 and 2. So total 80% to your pursuit hits, which is just nutty. All right, so chambers. I'm going to do this really quickly. Just run red for basically every build for the most part. They really undertuned these other ones in my opinion. If you run them all, you get 3% crit rate, some move speed, and a baby amount of SET recovery speed. But it costs you 6k cap on a dual wield character and 20% skill damage. So no thanks, just run red. There you go, easy enough. Good stuff, thank you. Moving on. Alright, well, we're here over on Encroaching Dread just because it's just a generically okay place to test some stuff. And we're going to show some of his various skills. We've got our S1, which in the description is an instant gap closer. It does do that. You have 0 range restrictions, so we can see we'll target way in the back here. We're just going to leap in. Boom. So he does a little stab, and then he does a quick like snap up with his sword to kind of do an uppercut for extra hits. I did a little bit of testing and looking at the actual damage that's being applied here, and I took some notes. The first stab he thrusts, when he actually dashes in, does 25% more damage than average. For context, when I'm talking about average, I have this new way of talking about damage multiplication where it's graded on a curve amongst all 3 skills. For example, the follow-up hit after the initial dash in is standard, or 1x. So it's doing regular damage for multiplication, but the initial stab was 25% stronger. So if you weren't capping, that was 25% higher on the damage. Great. Again, you dash in from anywhere, cross the map, get to the person that you want to get to. Boom. Slaps him. Good stuff. You'll love to see it. Not mad at it at all. 6 hits, charges in 11 SET, which is pretty good for an S1. I've seen shorter, but it's pretty on average, maybe slightly below average. Overall, good stuff. Next is his S2, which you can actually initiate from anywhere, as I'll showcase here. So if I hit S2, I'll just draw a circle here, and then I slam the ground. When you draw that circle, standard 1x damage. No big deal. But it does do damage, though, for at least some hits. But then when he does that sword slam, in order to light it up and do damage around, 2 things happen. 1, you're going to do a medium level heal to your allies, not to you, as you saw there, but to your allies. They get a little bit of a heal, so that's cute. But also, you get a 50% plus the damage for those hits, for that specifically. So 1.5x multiplier on those things, which is really cool. That charges in 28 seconds. Stocks of S1, obviously 4, and you get 2 of Guardian Field, 3 at base of Light Spear Cannon. So, fun stuff there. So, again, this is some pretty good damage overall, as you can see. We're not capping on some because, like, Big Beefy Guy is, like, light plus 50 or something, but either way, still pretty good. So, yeah, can fire that off from anywhere. Pretty straightforward for the most part. And so that is 12 hits, 24 dual wield. And now we're going to go into Light Spear Cannon. This one does have a hard range restriction, so we're going to have to run our ass up here. So, you'll notice he does like a flick of his sword, and then it kind of creates a whirlwind. So that whirlwind that happens before the follow-up barrage uppercut thing, stab that he does, that actually does a light gather to kind of move things in front of you. That guy's dead now, so I can't really showcase that. Maybe I'll show on the next wave. All of the hits on this skill is all standard damage. This is also LC. Hopefully things don't just die right away, but if we kind of have some little mobs of some sort, we'll go ahead and show the gather. So this should be enough that it should just gather everybody into a circle before they die. You know, they're just dying. And I'm on Steam instead of my iPhone, so it's just not there. If they all stood in place, I would not have hit everyone. The AoE is low enough for that. Hi, this is Post-Recording Zero, coming in with a couple of other S3 notes that I forgot and realized in hindsight while I was editing. So that's going to be 28 SET to recharge, and also I noticed something really cool, which is after that initial slam that gathers, you actually track your initial target on the follow-up swing. So if something happens to be moving and it's unflinchable and it moves past you, he'll even do like a 180 to turn around and stab them. Or if you start initiating it and then they walk out of range, as soon as he's ready to do that lunge, he's going to almost do like a mini dash in to get closer to them. Every once in a while I saw it fail, but it was just really cool to see that he's not really locked into his positioning there. He wants to hit whatever his main targeted enemy was. So that's really nice to just make sure you more reliably get that damage. This is a good place for me to showcase something really specific. He has a passive that lets him get super armor, which is this spell here. Okay? Overlimit. Now, you can only get this if you happen to charge this gauge that's in the background, okay? And this gauge that's in the background fills when you use a particular amount of skills. This is not doing damage. This is basically when you consume a stock, it fills an invisible gauge. As long as you consume a skill, you can get flinched out instantaneously, and it counts towards building that gauge, which is nice in situations like this where you're not getting any skills completed and fired off until you actually have super armor. The way this actually works is that each of the skills is valued at a particular amount. S2 and S3 each will take 3, any combination of those, 3 of them, in order to get it charged so that you're allowed to use your super armor buff. S1 effectively takes 2, it's basically half the stacks. So if you do 2 Guardian Fields, 2 S2s, and then do 2 S1s, that will do it. Or if you do an S3 and then an S2 and then 2 S1s, that will work, and so on and so forth. I did find that for some reason, trying to get it with just S1s, it ends up taking 7. So there's some weird math in there where 6 doesn't quite do it, but basically it's half. So either just throw down like 2 Guardian Fields in an S3, or 3 Guardian Fields, maybe you're running skill stock 2, and you can stay away from combat, throw those down, you can do that, or maybe throw down 2 of those and then some dashes in. So I'll kind of show that. You're going to see that he struggles to hit his damage here. He's going to keep getting flinched until I can get that super armor. Yep. Flinched. Flinched. Yep. And then an S1, and now you see that I have this buff here. Okay? That's the one that says, hey, the door is open, you can now use overlimit. Great. So now I'm going to use that. Awesome. So now I have super armor for when I actually start using my skills. So now I'm not getting interrupted anymore, and things are getting wrecked. Awesome. Now, you'll notice this is already flashing. Whoa. Why is that? Well, that's because this buff only lasts 10 seconds. Yep. Which means you need to be really, really tactical and use it in a finite window when you truly need it most. You can't just willy-nilly use it and be like, oh, I've got like a solid minute of just going ham now. No, you need to tactically plan for when you need this and get your skills used. Once you actually use those skills and you get that little buff icon saying it's ready, that'll just sit there. I don't believe that expires. At least I haven't seen it expire unless you die. So you're good there. it'll stay charged. But you want to just hold it for when maybe what you would have is the boss alternates using like magic spells or something. So you can use some stuff, queue up the super armor, and then when you know that big CC is coming in for like 5 seconds or something, you can go ahead and pop the super armor ahead of time, start spamming skills, and while everything else is stunned, you're in actually putting in work. All right, so now that I talked about the things that I like about the guy, let's go ahead and check out some builds, right? That's probably why some of you came here. So let's go ahead and hop into a few different builds that we can have fun with. Alright, so our first build here is my most generic. We've got Holy Blade, Zagidosian. This one, it doesn't have to be this in particular, but it's just generically has a bunch of light damage on it, high strength stat, to just help boost your stats up there. He comes with things like Pride 2. We're going to be throwing Pride on him, so, you know, stats don't hurt, and, you know, we take those. You can replace this easily with something like Excalibur, especially if it's plus 40 for some extra crit rate, help your sustain a bit. You can throw something as generic as Pure Blade on it. It's going to work great in this build as well. All really great stuff. It doesn't have to be a light weapon, just something that boosts your damage in general, because we're not going for Goddess Kiss procs in this build. You could spec into that if you want, if you wanted to bend this to use Honey Elixir or something different, but this is just meant for us to be able to go through multiple waves, slap stuff generically in most multiplayer fights. That's why it's here. Covert Gun Trishula, this just lets us ignore that resistance, so even if something is 100 light res, he just simply will not care, and is just going to chop right through it, so it's great. And then Equilibrium Sphere and Mithril Relief, these are just some generic bonuses that are good. He's also got some move speed here that helps, since the only move speed in his kit we're removing in favor of caps, which we'll actually look at. Over to the skills here, we're grabbing Crit Up 2 just because adds a little bit extra chance for Proud Force to proc, which is always nice. Fast Brave to get us some extra strength, which equals damage. Fast Metis in order for our Proud Forces to be better. That by itself triples our Proud Force procs for the first 40 seconds, so should help to keep us max HP, which is great. Fast Speed, just so that if we're not dashing in with our S1, we can go ahead and just run to wherever the hell we need to go. Maybe we get knocked back by a boss and we don't have S1s charged. We'd like to be able to get back into the fight and keep doing our damage, you know? So, good stuff. Patience, this is there just because I had 2 SC to save, and, you know, every once in a while, that extra 20% conditional, that can kick in the middle of, say, a boss ult. So that could keep you alive and keep you down at a lower amount, allowing you to then get your Awaken proc, which will, you know, just snowball you to finish the fight, hopefully. Adding Pride just because it goes with Pride too, and it's just, you know, efficient stats that translates to damage, especially when we're running really high stats in this particular build. This says Ice Drive. This is meant to be Light Drive. I don't have White Monolith, so I don't have this available on my account. But this is just a standard bonus. It's not overly efficient, so if you need to replace something, this is an easy cut. Pose of Glory. This is so that in those early waves, before you have Pirate Feast, you can go ahead and keep looping your skills, or if you're in a stage that also has mobs alongside the boss, you can kind of kill them passively to keep your skills going as well. It's so cheap and so good that I just like to put it in almost all my builds. Can't really go wrong with Pose of Glory on a physical DPS. Pose of Honor, this is because later down the line we're going to see that I'm running Sharp Eyes, because this is a lazy build. Instead of running Slayers and Special Boost, which is what I normally do when I'm min-maxing, we're being generic. So I'm running Sharp Eyes, and I want to keep my MP pool high, so this extra 2 SC basically just means by the time I get to the boss battle, I'm going to have a full MP pool, which means I'm going to get all 33 skills of Sharp Eyes to be able to fight that boss with. If I can't kill it in 33 skills, there's a problem with the build. Alright? Pirate's Feast, goated. Yeah, get all your skills back every wave. Yeah, can't really argue with that. Sword High Boost, he's missing it, and it's really efficient. So yeah, get that. Spear High Boost, again, I don't have White Monolith, so this is meant to be Machine High Boost, obviously. So if you go ahead and you're running Trish, add both of these because they just help you hit damage even better. Nice. Stock Skill 2, his S2 isn't his highest DPS skill, but it is still pretty solid damage, and you want to be able to get as much as you can, especially with Pirate Feast, especially if you're in something like multiplayer where, hey, maybe you end up being the only solo DPS because you're with a bunch of noobs that can't really hold their own. There you go. I did throw in Purple Orb here just because recently everybody had an opportunity to get it, If you're newer than the Devil May Cry collab, this is an easy 11 SC that you could just throw towards whatever you want. Maybe you want some more survivability, something else, you can go ahead and replace that. This is the only item that isn't general pool in this entire build, but it is worthwhile for those of you that happen to have it. Skill charge 1, this is literally for wave 1 of multiplayer, or whatever. Basically, you charge in. This is going to give you almost 2 skills, so if you at least kill 1 enemy, this is going to give you a second charge. And yeah, going to be able to help you to chain and just clear that wave 1 really fast, which is always nice, and then go into your Pirate Feast for everything else. Sharp Eyes, generic damage boost, really efficient, great. Berserker, again, just a really efficient boost, 30% for 8, great. And you're going to, this damage over time is really negligible. For anybody that doesn't know, Berserker is like 15% of your max HP every 6 seconds. You will heal way more than that with Proud Force, so not a big deal at all. Arc, you can kind of use whatever you have that's really good, just to make this accessible. I just threw on the standard SR, Grave of the Blade Master. Nothing overly special, gives us some damage, gives us a little passive SET speed regen, which is negligible. You're not really going to notice it, but basically it just shows this build works whether or not you're doing anything overly fancy. So, alright, let's go ahead and see what we can do here. We're just going to smack, do some more smacks. Great. A little slower than I would like. Definitely we ended up getting unlucky that we got the beefy, huge light res dude. But overall, we're going to be alright. Especially now that we're actually using other skills. You know, over 30k caps on a really generic build against things with high defense. Not bad. And again, remember, I am missing 2 actual skills. This build is supposed to have machine high boost and light drive in it. And I'm currently just wasting those skills here, so. Alright, so we're going to use 1 skill. There's an S2. We got flinched out. Doesn't matter. Alright, now 1 more. Alright, so we used 1 more. Now we can over limit. Alright, and now we can actually start slapping some things. There we go. So, we started out flinching a lot, but all we had to do was, in the middle of getting flinched, hit a couple of S2s, a couple of S1s, boom, we were ready to go, still at all our S3 stocks. Not too bad. Now, again, I'd say this particular build is probably my least recommended, but it's the most approachable. So if you don't want to think about it and you just want to use him as just a classic old school DPS, he's very good. He's very, very good. This next build is going to be a bit more meta, in my particular opinion. This is going to be switching over to be a crit Icy Guardian Pursuit build. This is probably going to be your most generically high DPS output that you can get without like tinkering with some of his weird mechanics. We're going to go with True Sword Excalibur for getting some flat damage as well as crit rate. We of course want our non-crits to be capping as well, while also getting as much crit as we possibly can. We also have Star Road the Heavenly Bow. This is going to give us an extra 10% crit rate on our light skills, which is fantastic. Just buff that crit rate even more for our Icy Guardian. If you do not have this, an alternate option is the Paladin Bow, which is also excellent, and we'll be using in our final build as well. So this is another option you have. I'm using the other one just because it does have a bigger strength stat, just so when we're adding all the things together, probably makes it slightly easier for me to cap, so why not just run it? I don't plan on needing Goddess Kiss proc, so the fact that it's Earth doesn't really hurt me much, so I think it's fine. Again, Equilibrium Sphere, it's just really hard to argue with it, it's just good damage. And then Deadly Choker for an extra 3% crit rate, because we're trying to min-max on that front. Now this time we are running Weak, because that's going to help you not only cap with your light damage when we're not running Trishula, but it's also going to drop that ice resistance so that Icy Guardian's going to be hitting harder as well. Definitely do that. Again, crit up 2. This is a build where if you're going to be running this, you should be trying to min-max if you can. You don't have to. You could totally swap out Slayer and Special Boost for some more generic damage. Go ahead, you do you. But for me, when I'm running something like this, it's because I know that I'm trying to nuke face. So I have room in here for the Slayer and Special Boost. For this particular example, we're going to go fight Mardagade. See how that looks. I haven't actually used this build there, so we'll see how that goes. Again, Brave Metis, hard to argue with, just generically good stuff. Pride, we did add Ardor now for extra crit rate, so that's great. Luckily, he has almost everything else he needs. If you're trying to min-max really hard and you have Council of 10, you can give him light critical raise. I don't think it's really worth it. Yeah, even if I had it, I would not put it in my build. So again, Pirate Feast, good stuff. Sword High, again. I got rid of the secondary bonuses because, hey, we're not using a machine now. We are actually using a bow. We don't have bow boost or bow high boost. But if you see this in the future, and there's an arc where you can get bow boost, bow high boost, bow mega boost, those instantly get slotted in here for the crit rate. No questions asked. You find room. Again, stock skill 2 and purple orb, you could swap these if you don't got them. Skill charge 1, again, wave 1, cool. Since we're getting pursuit hits on our specials, or on our skills, we're going to be getting more and more hits, so it's going to be even easier to hit our combo master damage, so why not make it even easier for us to be able to hit that? Between you and allies, you should be getting up there pretty reasonably well. Berserker, again, just a good generic damage boost. The whole reason for running this, Icy Guardian, this gives you 1 plus 40% crit damage, which means if you have to fight through resistance and you're not capping on your non-crits, you should be able to cap on your crits, which means your pursuit should also be able to hit. And then when he's got his plus 80% pursuit damage, the 50% damage that this applies is going to get scaled up pretty significantly. It's going to be cranking that up to like 90% bonus damage, almost doing double damage on that hit, unless they resist ice heavily. But either way, it's just fantastic. All right, so I couldn't actually find a party. For some reason, people weren't joining up. So this isn't going to be a super great representation because it's just nightmare mode, so I can run solo. But we're still going to go in and run this and see how this goes. We're going to lead off with a weak. Now let's just see what he's actually got here. So 50 light res on this guy. Alright, cool. We're going to go ahead and dash in here. Use an S2. Yeah, looks like we are pretty much capping. There we go, great. So since recording, I have a better place for actually testing my builds out, so I'm liking coming to the story mode fight for Bahamut, just because, one, he flinches an okay enough amount that makes it annoying, and kind of gives you some real-world application of how some of these units can perform. He's pretty resistant to elemental damage, which makes it a little bit harder on units like this, but also makes it so that, you know, you're not fighting somebody that is going to be resisting something like Icy Guardian a ton, but you can still see the type of damage you can output anyway. So this is a little bit more of a challenging fight, but despite that, Luke can still perform at a really high level. So this build is slightly adjusted from what I just showed, just because I forego something like Pirate Feast in order to get some of this other stuff, but it's not really a huge deal. I've got Gen and Expet in order to provide some Honey Elixir goodness, as well as a little bit of debuffs. Now, over on Expet specifically, in addition to Theo, which, if you have level 10 Theo, helps Luke out a ton. So that's really cool. What I'm actually doing on her is I'm running Skill Charge 1 and 3 as well as Phone Booth, because then after she uses the spells that I want her to, her AI is going to have her not only using auto attacks to get MP back, but she's actually going to be using skills, and when she's using those skills with dual wield, she's not going to be doing much damage because she's not really spec'd for damage right now, but she will be getting those hits, which could increase my chances of getting an ice pursuit buff, that FOF buff. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to lead things off with a Honey Elixir. And then we're going to Theopolis, just to drop that resistance a little bit. I'm only level 3 or 4, so it drops about like 30. Nothing super duper crazy. But we're going to go ahead and start wailing into him on our S3s. We are catting, of course, because that's what we do with our damage. Alright, so now we went and we got a light buff. We gave ourselves a light buff, which is nice. We're going to go ahead and do our super armor now. Keep laying into him. So we got another light buff off of ourself, which is great. And go ahead and Honey Elixir once again here. Got another light buff, so this should be enough to just one-shot him now. Not quite, not quite, but still pretty good damage regardless. Got a decent amount of buffs. 22 seconds. 22 seconds, pretty respectable clear time, I'd say, especially because I'm kind of half-assing it. I think the best I've ever gotten was about 20 seconds. So, not too bad at all. Pretty good stuff. So anyway, that's the Icy Guardian build. For this final build, which I think is the most fun, maybe not the most meta, but I think it's pretty great and surprisingly effective, we're going to be coming in and wasting a few energy orbs just because I don't know a better place to test it right here. This is the actual Purple Dragon. We're going to go ahead and fight this with only regular attacks and just see how we do. Sounds good? Sound good. Alright, so here's the build. This is actually a regular attack pursuit build. And this is something that excels mostly against things that are weak to light, because we have lots of sources of light pursuits, which just get massively amped up from both weakness as well as his passives, and just ends up equaling a way crazier amount of damage than you're normally used to. The damage that I get off this ends up being comparable to like some of my other units' S3s, which is just a little silly. So the arc of choice for this one happens to be St. Marius. Now, Icy Guardian could be used here as well if you happen to not have this arc, and it's still pretty good damage overall, especially if it just happens to be weak to ice, then it could be even comparable. But I found that since this gives to all attacks instead of just some, and it's being boosted because it's weak, when we're specifically against things weak to light, this arc is just more damage in general. So really, this regular attack steal extra light is really the only thing we care about here. But it's great. Now, into the skills. So, what is this? So this build is something I would probably recommend to people that don't have many tools on their account. Maybe you don't have things to help abuse SET, and so you don't usually have that many skills, and you find yourself using regular attacks to do damage. This will do a lot of damage with just your regular attacks, at least a fair bit of time. If you're going against something that resists light a little bit more, I would swap out St. Marius, or Spirit Blade Marius, for something like Excalibur that's actually going to make you do more damage at base and then let your pursuits come in afterwards. Because if you're not actually capping, then this doesn't work as well, because then all those pursuit hits aren't quite as strong. But this is going to give you an extra like 20 to 20% pursuit hit. Same with Paladin Bow, that's super good, but that also increases your crit rate by 10%, so your sustain's going to be better. If you happen to be using Icy Guardian, that'll buff it there as well. Equilibrium is just here to help boost that base damage to make sure our regulars are actually capping. Rad Moon Relic. This is actually it says chance of these things, but it's actually just a chance. Basically, it's random of each of those. So you always do extra damage, but it's a chance on which of these actually has the damage get applied to them. So yeah, you don't know if it's going to be fire, thunder, or ice, but either way, still bonus damage, which is great. So even if they resist it, the fact that you're going to have that damage boosted by an extra 80% means that this just does a lot of work. It helps so much. It's so good. All right, so for the skills on this one, we have a little bit for insurance here. We've got Shadow, Circle, and Weak. Hopefully we don't usually need those, but I put them in here so that you have room in case you need to be able to make things be weak. If some people were around a long-ass time ago for Moon Saber, it's a great way to sustain. Otherwise, this is just 4 SC. You can throw it whatever you want. So, cool. I threw in the appropriate killer and special boost for this particular example. You don't necessarily have to, but if you don't, depending on what you're fighting, you might have to add some more damage mods, potentially replace your sword with an actual damaging sword instead of a pursuit one. So it's not ideal. So for the memes, when we're fighting things that we know exactly what we're trying to kill, it's weak to light, we know its type, gonna have some fun, good stuff. I had room for Poison Fang, or Corrosion Fang, so we did that. You could technically run something like Terror Melt 3 for some extra damage caps if you felt like it, or Terror Melts in general, and then have some researches. He's not awful at it since he's got a total of 3 slashes, each doing their own hit, so 6 hits total, which isn't the worst. It's not great, but it's not the worst, so he can do some research stuff if he needs to, but I digress. Again, Fast Brave metas more damage as well as passive sustain if he needs it. Pride, more damage, yay. Dusk, we're not really using MP, and if we are, we should be able to get it back. In general, the Dusk is just decent. Usually you shouldn't be needing the spells that I put in here, so if you want to replace it, you can. Otherwise, this just helps us stay topped up. Because we know what we're fighting, we can run a physical weak point boost. We know things are going to be weak to light, so efficient boost there. The impacts, hey, these never get used ever. They work on this guy because he amps that damage up really high. Arguably, impact is only a chance, so like this is the easiest one to drop out, but I had plenty of space in this build, so why not spend the 2 SE? Yay! Sword high boost, yep, of course, still more damage. Skill charge 1, I still like to have this just so that every wave you can charge into combat instead of having to run, which is just cool. Berserker, more damage. And now here, I actually put on all 3 of these, because the 3% crit, okay, cool, help me sustain a little bit better. This one actually does nothing, so that could technically be marked off because we're not really using skills much, except if we're like charging in. So it's there just so that if you charge in, there's a little damage, or if you feel like using skills, you technically could. But then importantly, we actually get the move speed now, which means we're going to be way zippier than you saw in the other videos. So hey, cool. Fun things are fun. Let's go ahead and see what we can do against this stupid dragon. Let's just see. So for context, Adele takes, at least my Adele takes 3 S1s to kill this guy. Let's see what happens with regular attacks. Overkilled it with 2 regular attacks. Pretty okay. Pretty okay. I like it. As they say, that's a lot of damage. Now, if we wanted to adjust this to not be so content specific, let's make a quick adjustment to the build, and we'll go back to our good old encroaching dread. So, adjustments for a generic build to use regulars against stuff that's maybe not as weak to light, but, you know, maybe neutral to slightly positive, and you want to try to do things anyway. So, switching over to True Sword Excalibur for some crit rate, as well as some damage. Zagidosian will work just fine. Nothing else would really replace this very much. If you can make Marius work, cool, but... yeah, if you can make Spirit Blade Marius work, sweet, but yeah, in general, not so much. Everything else stays the same because we're trying to boost damage. We're just boosting the shit out of some stats, because that's kind of going to get elevated with his Holy Aura is going to buff Excalibur in general, and there's not a whole lot of ways to boost your regulars, so this is just kind of what we got. We're going back to running the full crit package, so crit 2, and then you'll see Ardor further down. If you're not capping, having some crits go through and actually hit full damage doesn't hurt, so since we had room in the build, I put that in there. You can replace that with survivability if you want, but I still like it. A lot of the stuff staying the same. Again, adding back in Ardor. We've got Dusk for survivability still. Phase change. So I actually found phase change to do roughly like 20% extra damage in this build, which is pretty decent. It's not the worst thing. Better than the stat ups overall, and I had the room, so I threw it in. When you have more int, obviously it helps even more, but I found that even on these physical DPS units with like 800 or less int, if you just need to boost their regular attacks, it's not the worst thing in the world, so threw it in there. So let's go ahead and see just what using only regular attacks basically looks like. Just because we're built for regular attacks doesn't mean things aren't going to still be good. Like, watch, I'll still S1 right out the gate. Still slaps with that S1, right? Now look at these regulars, though. That's 50 light res on that guy. But I mean, he just chops people up with his regular attack. Look at this. And then of course the hit counts tend to go crazy too, as long as things aren't dying. I mean, it's basically like 1 or 2 regular attacks and he's at combo master already. It's pretty okay. Pretty okay. See, things just die. Now, the negative to this is you can't use his super armor buff basically at all, because it's not super armor in general. It's the super armor is when you're using skills. So, yeah. All right, well, that is going to wrap up this deep dive. We went through some of the different hidden mechanics that were here. We went through 3 builds, kind of a bonus 4th one as well, even though it was just a variant of the 3rd. Hopefully you learned something and had a good time. I know I did. I've had a blast playing with Luke. He's a really, really interesting character. He's really, really awesome at base, and then he's got a layer to, hey, you can go even further beyond by making pursuit stuff, and then even further beyond by understanding mechanics and micromanaging and doing crazy stuff. So there's a lot of layers and depth to him, so I had a ton of fun testing him. He was really, really great. Unfortunately, I don't have Stan to be able to test him, but I've done a little bit, and I've seen some people, and it seems like he's a really, really awesome unit as well. And I can't wait to see what Yuri is going to be bringing to the table. So I'm saving my gems, going to see what Part 2 has to offer, whether it's Yuri or Azark. And if I end up getting him, maybe I'll do another deep dive for that. It all depends on if you guys like this or not. So if you liked this, please let me know down in the comments below. Give me a like or whatever, if you liked it, of course. And then let me know down in the comments if there's anything I can do to improve these videos, format in general. I'd like to be able to start making some more things, get back into content creation, especially because we kind of have a little bit of a hole, at least in my mind, because I'm sure many of you probably know Budafish is moving away from Last Cloudia as his main channel, and he's kind of been standard for going to, you know, get news updates and unit builds and things like that. And while I won't be able to keep up with what he did as far as unit builds, especially because I don't, you know, I don't really have excess money to be whaling for units or anything like that, but as I see ones that I can and I can find time for, I want to. But then also starting to do actual news updates and be able to deliver some of that content to you guys, so that for those people that just really don't like to read patch notes or anything, you know, I'd like to be able to offer that opportunity to people to be able to consume that knowledge instead of hearing about it secondhand someplace else, or maybe not at all until it, you know, it's right on top of them and they're not really prepared for it. If that's something that interests you guys, please let me know as well, because if there's not really much demand for that sort of thing, then I'm not going to bother, because I make the content to be able to help people, and if there's not going to be many people I'm really able to help, I probably won't bother, but that's something I would like to do. I'm rambling at this point, so again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you would like to come chat with me sometime, I put my Discord down in the description below. We've also got timestamps. You can jump to wherever you want in this video to be able to grab your builds or whatever it may be. If you're interested in joining my guild, Advocates of Gobble, I actually have a link to our guild as well. So we actually have two guilds. If you weren't aware, we have our actual advocates, which is our super try-hard guild. We've got stricter requirements, and you are kind of pitted against our current members in order to try to secure a spot, since we are max and there's only 20 slots. But at worst, almost anybody can be accepted into the AOG family, which gives you access to our Discord server where you can come and chat, have a good time, and learn with some of the rest of us and have fun in a friendly environment where, you know, everybody kind of gets along, or if you're making fun of somebody and dicking around, it's probably all in good fun and good faith. It's a really, really nice environment to grow and worship our Lord and Savior, Gobble. If you're interested in that, that's a thing, and yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all stopping by for my first video back in a while for the most part. Cheers. Go forth and murder things. Bye-bye.